What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video. In this video, we've got another Chaos Return format video. If you don't know Chaos Return format, it's the format held in August 2006 at the SJC Indianapolis of that year, a year after the SJC Indianapolis that GOAT format's based on. And I used the April 2006 ban list. And this format is pretty fun from what I've seen so far. It's kind of similar to Reaper format, but, you know, one of the most powerful decks, Steinarch, is hit a bit by the ban list there. Last will is at 1, as opposed to at multiple copies like it is in Reaper, as well as Treeborn Frog being at 1 copy. So Steinarch is a bit less scary than it is in Reaper format. It's still around, it's still a very good deck. I mean, this list right here was built by LFU2, and they actually won a tournament with it in the past. And then the follow-up Chaos Return format tournament, I actually played it and piloted it to a top 4 finish. So, you know, I think this list is very good. In that last tournament, you know, there was a second place player who was on Steinarch and on a slightly different build. But I chose to go for this one because it did win a previous tournament and also, you know, did get top 4 in that event. And I just like this build of the deck quite a bit. It's sort of what I'm used to. Now, that being said, you know, it's been a while since I played it. So in the games themselves, I do make some pretty big mistakes there. But I also think, like, it is a very powerful deck. And hopefully you get to see the power of this deck as I play through the games that I've got to show for you today. Well, let's go through the card by card real quick. We got Break with Magical Warrior here to clear away back row and act as a beater. We get a Chaos Orc here to banish a Light and Dark from grave and bring out a big guy. You know, this is Chaos Return format, so it makes sense that we've got a Chaos monster here to rep that. We got Triple Sidra. You know, this is just a great way to get a body on board to tribute, as well as just getting aggressive pressure on field. We got double Cyber-Stein with only 1 copy of Last Will. If you want to see this more often, then you want to play multiple copies of it. This makes sense. 1 DD Assailant, this card is limited in this format, and 1 DD Warrior Lady as well. And triple Hydrogeddon to get in over your opponent's stuff and get out another Hydrogeddon from deck. Very, very powerful card. We've got 1 Magician of Faith here. This card is semi-limited, but I think in a deck like this, it doesn't really need to play 2, so I like this decision. We've got a Mobius here to clear away back row, triple Tomato to get bodies on field, potentially go into Stein as well. We've got a Sangan here to search out a card from our deck. We've got a Spirit Reaper here to wall up a bit. We've got a Treeborn Frog, which is great in Monarchs. This card is limited, so it's hard to get to now. But I do think it is still a very good card. We got double Zaborg the Thundermark to pop our opponent's stuff. We've got a Book of Moon to set down our opponent's monsters, or potentially our own, depending on the situation. We got triple Cold Wave to prevent our opponent from doing anything to stop our OTK once we've got it sort of set up. We've got a Coffee to take out a card from our opponent's hand. We've got an enemy controller to either take control of their stuff or to switch the battle position. We get Graceful Charity. For some reason, this card is now limited instead of banned in this format. I don't know why, but it's here, so we're playing it. Heavy Storm to wipe away our opponent's back row at the Last Will to bring out Stein. Double Knock here to banish our opponent's stuff. We've got a Premature Burial to bring back monsters from grave. We've got a Smashing Ground to pop their monsters. We got a Snatch Seal to take their monsters, and a Swords to slow down the game a bit. For the traps, we got Call the Haunted to bring back our stuff, Mirror Force to pop our opponent's attacking monsters, and ATT to wipe away the board. For the side deck, there's sort of like a hodgepodge of cards here. We got Double Decree to shut down our opponent's traps. We've got a Gold Woolord of Dark World to, you know, act as a funny check against decks that are trying to discard cards from hand, which is kind of funny. We've got Double Banish of the Radiance against decks that are more graveyard reliant. We've got a Shura Priest against more recruiter-focused decks. We've got a Chiron the Mage to pop back row. We've got Double Karibo against more OTK-focused decks, a Mobius in case we need more back row popping, a Reaper in case we need more walling, Brain Control to take control of our opponent's stuff, Enemy Controller to either take control of their monsters or switch a monster to defense. We've got an MST to pop more back row, and a Scapegoat to wall up a bit, in addition to 2 Decree to stop back row heavy decks. But for the Fusion deck, this is sort of the standard Fusion deck, like at the time. I did change this a little bit in sort of rebuilding the deck here because, you know, while the Fusion deck is limited, so you could potentially side in, or not side in, but proxy in any of these cards that aren't actually in the list itself. I do think it's nice just having them here as a reference. So we got a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon for a big body. We've got Cyberblader because that third effect occasionally comes up. We've got Cyber End Dragon to attack over defense position monsters. We've got Cyber Twin Dragon to get in for an OTK. We've got Dark Vault of the Terrible to negate effects. We've got Dark Blade the Dragon Knight to banish cards from grave. We got Dragoness and Flame Ghost here in case we need to get under some floodgates. Flame Ghost is also a dark for our Chaos Orc, which can come up. We got a Fiend Skull Dragon to negate target effects and flip effects. We've got a Gatling Dragon to pop the field. We've got King Dragoon to stop targeting effects. We've got Reaper on the Nightmare to get in for a direct attack and also rip a card out of hand. We've got a Reuse Entry to stop traps and also spells that target it. We've got a Last Warrior for another plant to stop summons and Thousand Eyed Trick to suck up our opponent's monster. But that's going to do it for the list. Let's dive into some games and see how this deck actually plays. Okay, our first game here is against Jim Bob, a frequent guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We're diving into the rock, paper, scissors, and we do win the rock, paper, scissors, so we are able to go first here. You know, I think people are catching on to paper meta, given my last videos, so I, threw a scissors here to win that one there. But anyways, this is a really good first hand, so we're just going to start off with a cold wave, and then just set a tomato pass. Next turn, we can potentially tribute that for a last will, go for a Stein play, potentially snatch their monster if they summon something in attack. So I feel really good about this. Our opponent is going to bring out a Sidra of their own, and then bring out a tomato here, attack into our tomato, and we're going to think about this a bit, and we're going to just go for a Sangan. The reason for this is that if they attack into the Sangan with the tomato, then we get a Cyber-Stein search, and then next turn we can actually go for lethal by snatch stealing their tomato, and, bringing out, like, Cyber Twin and some other stuff. So there's some lethal lines here if we go for this, whereas if we just go for more tomatoes and allow them to crash into that, they could bring out other things that complicate our OTK a little bit. So we're just going to go for the Sangan here, take 400, add that Cyber-Stein to hand there, and then they're going to pass back to us. We draw Zaborg, so actually that's really good, because now we can just go for even more lethal here. We're going to special the Sidra, go for the Stein. We're going to choose not to distribute the Zaborg, pop the, Mystic Tomato, and get a Stein out from deck with Will, because, this sort of gives less information to our opponent, and the OTK line that we had last turn still applies here. So we go for a Twin, we go for last will as well, and take control of the tomato, and that will be lethal because we just crash the Cyber Dragon into their Cyber Dragon, bring out like a Spirit Reaper, and then we have enough damage to get in for 8k exactly. So that's why I went for that. If I was playing around Karibo, I could have just gone for the Sidra into Zaborg play instead. That might have been a better move. But I think that overall, most decks don't really play Karibo in the main, so I feel like we didn't really have to play around that. But we're going second here. We don't really know what they're on. We just saw Sidra and Tomato, so it could be a variety of decks. We didn't really change anything that much. I guess we could have brought in an Assure Priest because we know they're on Tomato. But I think this is, fine as is. Anyways, we're going to go for a Graceful Charity here, draw 3, pitch 2. We could have also gone for Coffee before the Charity, just to get a peek at what they've got in hand, so that way we can sort of decide, okay, what are we discarding here based on their hand? But I think it's fine going for Charity first, especially because we want to try and bait out, potentially TT. If they've got TT plus Sangan set or something, then they get a search off that. Then we want to have Comfy available just in case. So we're going to pitch this Cold Wave and Will. I think this was a mistake. I think what I should have done is pitch this Cyber-Stein instead. I figured, okay, I've got Cyber-Stein in hand, so I don't really need the Will because Will just gets up Cyber-Stein. But what I should do here is I should just go for Will, because if they do have a way to stop this play here, I can just last will out a Stein from deck, and that's a lot better than just relying on the Hydrogeddon to survive, and then potentially playing a Cyber-Stein later. So I think that keeping Will just gives me a lot more flexibility. I've got other normal summons in hand that are really good as well that I can just use to press the offensive if I want it. So I don't need the Cyber-Stein in hand. I can just save the Will for that. But I pitched the Will instead of the Stein, and unfortunately I do get punished for it because they've got a TT there. I am able to Coffee, so rip a card out of their hand here at least. So we get a peek here. So they've got a Book, a Zaborg, a Snatch, and a Tomato. And I think what we want to get rid of here is probably the Tomato, because Tomato's a bit annoying for us to deal with. They can't really tribute out the Zaborg this turn because I don't have a monster. And, I mean, I guess the Snatch is annoying. So maybe I could have taken Snatch or Book, but I've got Mirror Force here either way to stop any aggressive pressure, so I'm okay taking Tomato. I think Tomato's the most annoying card here. But if I'd gone for the Stein play here, I think that would have been really good, keeping last will, because then I could have gone Stein into Twin, going for 6,300 points of damage, dropping them down to 1,700. I've got Mirror Force to back them up, and they don't really have a good way to get through that. I mean, we would be dropping down to 2,000, which is a bit scary, but I don't think they can kill us this turn. Although I guess they could Snatch steal the Twin, and if they've got a backer remover, then that would be annoying. So maybe it wouldn't have been the right choice to, go for the Stein play if I had last will here, but I think it would have been a good aggressive move. I don't know, a lot of the times in these Steinarch decks, you sort of got to make a decision point where, you could get really aggressive at a risk to yourself, or you could sort of try and bide your time a little bit more. And I just chose to bide my time a little bit more, but it does get a little bit awkward here. Opponent's going to go for a Graceful Charity, draw 3, pitch 2. And they're going to pitch a Zaborg and a Book, so 2 of the cards that we know about. They're going to activate Heavy Storm here, get rid of a Mirror Force, banish a Light in the Dark, going for that Chaos Stork there, and attack in for 2,300. That's a bit rough for us because now we're down below 5,000. And another reason to keep the Will in hand instead of the Stein. Now that we're below 5,000, the Stein is basically dead for us, so we can't use it. and it would be much less useful than a last will here. So kind of unfortunate there. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a book, which is pretty good. We can bring out this Devious Assailant, attack in to the Treeborn Frog. They're just trying to bait something out. Looks like that will not be baited out. We're going to go for smashing here, and then we're going to set this book pass back to them. I think in hindsight, I could have gone for smashing first, but they used up their book, or not used up, but they pitched their book. And so we don't really need to worry about that since that is limited in this format. So I think it's fine going for this ordering. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Magician of Faith, which is pretty good. We're going to attack into that set there. It is a Sangance. They're able to grab a monster from deck to hand. They're going to grab a Magician of Faith. They have some pretty powerful spells if they want to get those back, which is kind of unfortunate for us. We can set this Magician of Faith here, pass back to them. And they're going to set one pass back to us. We draw the second Stein, another reason why the last will would have been the better pick, because it also deck thins for us if we did want to go for that Stein play earlier, but we did not do that. So yeah, we're in a bit of a tough spot here with that double Stein in hand. We can just flip up the Faith, getting back Graceful, pitch the double Stein. I think that would be fine. But instead I go for Comfy here, because I'm like, well, okay, they've got Magician of Faith. They can get back Graceful. What I want to do here is I want to attack into the Magician of Faith with my monsters, pitch that Graceful from their hand, and I've got a pretty stable position here, and they might not. So that's what I go for. I think in hindsight, maybe the Graceful would have been the better move, because I am playing like Nobleman of Crosssets in this deck that I could draw into potentially. But either way, I get a little bit punished for this. I attack in with a Stein, and I'm like, well, if it's Magician of Faith, Stein gets over that, so that's fine, and then I can get in for more damage with these guys. But they've got Mirror Force here, so that will wipe away the entire board. I booked down the Faith, though, so we're able to set that up again. And also another reason, part of why I went for the Comfy instead of the Graceful, is because I had the book, so I could just flip down the Magician of Faith, go for a Graceful afterwards. But now this Comfy is kind of a bit less useful for us. We just choose to go for it anyways, because if they've got Graceful, this gives them less choices to discard. So it's something at least. We see that they've got a Magician of Faith and a Snatch Shield. That's very interesting. We're going to take the Magician of Faith because I feel like that's very powerful there. And they're going to keep the Snatch in hand. So they get back the Treeborn if they want to this turn, but it looks like they do not. They're just going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Call of the Haunted here. We're going to flip the Magician of Faith here, grab the Graceful now. And now we can go for Graceful, draw 3. And those are 3 pretty good ones. We're going to pitch this Stein and a Mobius because I don't really think they have the best spells and traps in hand. I could have kept the Mobius and pitched the Cyber Dragon instead, because I do have Call to bring back a monster here. And, Mobius stops Snatch. But if they go like Snatch on Zaborg, which we're probably bringing out this turn, then, we have to use Call to bring something back to block that attack, or else we're probably losing the game. So I like the Mobius in Graveyard better because, Mobius can at least crash with Zaborg there. So I'm going to distribute that Zaborg, pop the new set, which is an Apprentice Magician. So that gives us a little bit of information on what they're playing here. We're going to attack into the Mystic Tomato there. We didn't know it was Tomato, but that's a bit unfortunate for us. They could just honestly bring out Stein potentially, and that would be rough for us, but it looks like they're not doing that. Might mean that they're not playing Stein, might mean that they want to take it a bit slower to see what we have. We're just going to set a Call, pass back to them. They bring back a Frog here, go for the Snatch on our Zaborg, and they're going to think about exactly what to do here, but they're just going to eventually just attack in for 38. I think that's the right play, in my opinion, but I don't necessarily know what else they have there. But I go for Call, bring back the Mobius here. This will eat a crash, but, it would eat a crash no matter what we did. So they're going to attack in for 14, drop us down to 23. We've got Sidra. We also have this pre-map, which is pretty decent here. So we can go for Sidra here, pre-map back a monster, and we're going to pre-map back this Hydrageddon, because Hydrageddon can get in over those tomatoes there. We attack in to 1 tomato, and they bring out a Apprentice Magician. Okay, that's interesting. We bring out another Hydrageddon from deck. We attack over the Treeborn Frog here and bring out another Hydrageddon. And now we make a bit of a misplay here. What I should do is I should attack in with Sidra and then attack with Hydro into whatever they bring out, or potentially just leave it there in case it's like Magician of Faith. But we probably want to just, trigger the Magician of Faith now on our turn as opposed to theirs. But I attack him with Hydrageddon. This cost us 500 damage against them. That doesn't really matter too much because they're still in Stein range, so wouldn't really matter either way. But, it could come up potentially. So we're going to attack in to the Moth here. They will get back a Snatch Shield here, which is a bit worrying for us, but we got 1,500 and a full board. So I don't think we're at too much risk of dying here. There are some lines that can do it, but I think overall we're okay until they go for an Econ on that Sidra, and that's going to be very unfortunate for us, because now they can snatch one of the Hydrageddons, attack in to the other. And I mean, we're still alive here unless they've got another monster, but they do indeed have the Zaborg, and that will just do it. So that's going to be the end of the game here. Again, I did misplay with that apprentice. I also misplayed with the last will, not pitching the Stein instead. But I think we sort of acquitted ourselves well after that point. And while we did eventually end up losing, I think that, if our opponent had drawn a little bit differently, maybe we could have won that one. I don't know. Either way, it was a bit of a tricky spot for us. So, yeah, we did indeed lose that game too. But we're going into game 3, and we're hoping for a good one here. This is a really good opening hand. We're just going to set Mirror Force pass back to them. Yes, this does play a little bit into Comfy, but I don't want them to potentially knock our Sangan if we set that. So I'm just holding it. I also figure that if they summon out a monster here, attack in, and it's something that we can take, we can then side for next turn, bring out a Mobius or something, pops on their back row, and be fine with that. So I figure this is ultimately okay. But they go for Breaker here, pop our set, so they will pop a Mirror Force, unfortunately. Attack in for 16 here, and then main 2, they're going to set 1 pass back to us. Luckily, we can go for Cyber Dragon plus the Mobius there, so this is exactly as we planned it out there. Pop in that set, it's a book, so they will be able to set down this Mobius. We're able to set this call, pass back to them. And the reason I set the call is because, I could have saved it for when Sangan's engraved, but I don't think that will get there, too soon, and I want to block more damage here. In case they attack over our set and then try and attack indirectly. I can call back the Mobius or the Sidra. Unfortunately, they do have Heavy Storm to pop that, and now they're able to get in over the Mobius with the Tomato, attack indirectly for 16, and now we're down to 4,800, so our Steins are shut off. We draw Banisher, though. That's about as good a top deck as we could get. We're going to attack in to the Tomato here, deal 2, banish that. We're going to set the knock, pass back to them. They've used up a heavy, they've used up a breaker. If they want to blind MST this, they can as well. That would be kind of unfortunate, but they're also not really in the position where they're going to be setting too much here because they do have the aggressive pressure here. But it looks like they are indeed going to set that, pass back to us. We draw a Sidra here, so that's pretty good. And I do have a couple options here. I could go special Sidra, summon Sangan, attack in that way. However, I'm remembering back to last game and when they had Treeborn Frog set and a TT, and I don't want them to get that Treeborn Frog in rotation. So what I do instead is I do a bit more of a passive play, knocking their set, hitting Magician of Faith out of the deck. We, of course, have our only copy in hand here. And then I go for a Sangan, attack in for 1,000, and get in that way. I figure this is a more passive play, but it also plays around that frog, which is very annoying for us. You could say that that's a one of versus, other things that are more than that, but it would be a similar sort of situation if they had a Sangan set there and, they had a TT in the back row. But unfortunately for us, we do indeed lose this one because they are able to go for an Econ into last will into the Stein. Now, we didn't side or prepare for Stein because we hadn't seen it out of them the first 2 games. They could have potentially been on it because they are on Monarch, but it seemed like they were more on an Apprentice Monarch build, which didn't necessarily always play Stein. So I figured that they were not playing Stein here. And unfortunately, we do get punished for that because this will indeed be lethal damage. So, there were a couple things I could have done differently there. Again, I could have gone for Special Sidra, summon Sangan, knock their set, and then that would have actually allowed us to get in for potentially over 3,000 damage, which could drop them down below Stein range. But they did have this Econ back there to stop that attack from going through if they wanted it, but then they wouldn't have been able to take one of our things and trigger Last Will that way. So, I don't know. I think that this game was potentially winnable if I'd made some different decisions. But again, when you're playing Steinarch in this format or playing against Steinarch in this format, sometimes you do just have to make decisions that will commit you to a certain path and commit the game to a certain path. And, we made the wrong ones here, but in different situations, it could have definitely been the right one as well. But that's going to do it for this first game. Let's dive into the next one now. Okay, we got a game against Zawarodo Dark Arm God, a frequent guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We're diving in to the games here. We threw Rock because I figured that, the counter strat against Paper Scissors would probably be on the rise now that I've put that out in the water there. And so I figured Rock was the best choice for us, and it turned out well. They pretty good opening hand. We're just going to set this Tomato, set the book, pass back to them. And they're going to set 3, summon out a Kaiku, attack in. Seems like they're playing around Morphing Jar here. And we're able to bring out a monster off that Tomato. Now, we could potentially go for Stein here, but I feel like that's a bit greedy into 3 back row. So we're just going to go for this Sangan. Next turn, we can summon out Mobius, pop 2 of the back row, and feel pretty good about that. And they're just going to pass back to us. So we draw Magician of Faith here. Now, we got a couple different options. We could also, Econ, take control of the Kaiku and then tribute that for the Mobius. But I feel like we can save Econ for later. So I'm just going to go for tribute the Sangan, go for Mobius, pop 2 back row there. They have an MST, so that will hit a book. We're just going to book down their Kaiku there. And we're going to add a Treeborn Frog for later. I could have added Stein as well, but I don't necessarily want to telegraph Stein. And also, I feel like we're in a really good spot even if we don't like Stein in the near future. And I feel like Treeborn Frog pairs very well with enemy controller. So I want that for later. I attack over their Kaiku here, and then I just pass back to them. I could have set the enemy controller, but I don't want them to snipe that with something like a Breaker or a Dust Tornado and stuff, because we still don't know what that other set is there. And I really want to pair this with like Treeborn or something else like that to go for big damage later. I think in hindsight, I should have set this, because like even if they snipe it, I'm in a really good spot here overall. And there are some weird lines to lethal that they can have here. If they hard draw Stein, they've got Snatch Steal as well. Then they can bring out Stein, go for Snatch Steal or Econ actually as well if they're playing that, and take my stuff and go in for that. I figured since the Kaiku is here, and also, I just feel like they played this in a way that like Steinarch wouldn't do, but I don't know. There's definitely the possibility of it being Steinarch or just a Stein-based deck in general. So I maybe should have set the Econ just as a way to hedge against that. As is, they're going to bring out a Stein here, go for a Cyber Twin Dragon, and then they're going to go for Shrink on our Mobius. That doesn't quite do it, though, because this is 1600 plus 2800 plus 700, so that's not lethal. So, well, until they activate Limited Removal. So they pump their stuff, and that'll be the end of this game. So if I'd gone for Econ here instead, then I could potentially like taken the Cyber Twin. And I mean, yeah, I think taking the Cyber Twin would have been a fine way to block that. I could have also just switched to defense, taking the 200 from the Stein attacking in here. And then I would have had great plays next turn. So I think I should have set this. I mean, yeah, they just had a return in hand, so they wouldn't have been able to stop that if they did go for that play. So I think I definitely could have played that first game differently. But yeah, I held it, and I got punished for that. And we're going to go into game 2 here. And this is a pretty good opener. Any game where you go first and you've got Comfy is pretty great. I go for Comfy here. I could have gone for Cold Wave instead, but I think Comfy is a bit better just to get a peek at what they're working with here. So they've got Shining Angel, Limited Removal, Soul Purity and Light, Victory Viper, XX03, and Cyber Phoenix. So it seems like there's a bit of a spicy deck in the works here. What I choose to take is the Phoenix, because I don't want them to get that draw. Also, the targeting effect is kind of annoying for like our Book of Moon, for instance. So I'd rather get rid of that and leave them with the remaining cards in hand. Then I am going to just set a Mirror Force, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out Shining Angel. They're attacking in. We will just go for Mirror Force here and pop that, because that's a very annoying card to deal with. Now, they do have one Light Engrave now for the Soul Purity and Light, so that's good to keep in mind in the future. But I think we should still be in a pretty good spot overall. We go for the Cold Wave here, and then bring out a Tomato attack in for 14, and then pass back to them. Given their hand that we know about, they shouldn't really be able to do too much here, even if they go for like Vic Viper attack into Tomato to get the second Light Engrave, go for Soul, then, we can sort of deal with that next turn with Book plus Knock if we want to do that. So we've got a lot of options here. Instead, they're just going to straight up pass back to us. And now we draw Hydra again, which is great, because we can get them into Stein range here, or below Stein range, that is. And then we can just set this Book, pass back to them, and I feel really good about this. They're going to go for a Comfy here, get a peek at our hand. They're going to send that last Will to Grave instead of the Knock. So this means that they're likely going to summon something out, but, because we have this Book of Moon here, we can go for that. They're going to go for BrainCon on our Hydro. We're perfectly fine for that. If they've got like another Hydro in deck, that's unfortunate, but I feel like they probably don't given the deck that they're playing. But they're just going to tribute that off for a Sidra here. We're going to go for Book on that Sidra, and now we're in a really good spot, because now we can just go for Knock here, and ED Assailant should wrap things up as well. So we go for Knock, attack in for 31, and that will be the end of the game here. So that was a pretty commanding game 2, I think. So, I mean, I'm happy to see it work out there. And again, I think in game 1, if we had just set the Econ instead of just, leaving an empty back row, we could have potentially won that one as well, in case they went all in on that play. But anyways, this is a really good hand for us. We've got Cyber-Stein in the opener. We forget that we're going second and not first, so we accidentally draw there. But, it doesn't really matter that much. That Grace will allow us to see more of our deck here. They're going to set 2, summon out Bazoo, pass back to us. And we are going to just go for a Grace. We'll see what we get. And that's a pretty good hand overall. A lot of different things that we could do here potentially. We could potentially just snatch the Bazoo and then tribute something for that. I don't really think that's the best, though. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pitch a Knock and a Cyber-Stein here, because Cyber-Stein we can just bring out with Premature Burial, and so that allows us to bring it out without normal summoning. And we could even go for an OTK here by special summoning Sidra, going for the Zaborg, popping the Bazoo, and then bring back Stein and going for that. I feel like that's a bit greedy to do, so I'm not going to do that, but I am going to make a pretty aggressive play here. I'm going to bring out this Sidra. I'm going to summon out the DD Assailant, smash and ground the Bazoo there, and then just get in for a ton of damage. Unfortunately, they do have Mirror Force here, so that will stop that, and that's kind of rough. We set the Snatch Steal as a bluff there, pass back to them, and they're going to bring out a Graceful Charity of their own, so they're able to draw 3, pitch 2, and they're going to send a Vic Viper and a Cyber Phoenix, bring out Cyber-Stein, bring out a monster here, and if they don't kill us this turn, which I don't think they can do unless they have the 1 of limit removal yet again, then we are winning this game. So they're going to set 1 attack in, and they've got the limit removal. So that will be the end of the game. I mean, they got limit removal, they got limit removal. But yeah, that card is a 1 of, so it's not the most consistent thing in the world, but you know, when you do have it in conjunction with Stein, it is absolutely crazy. But that's going to do it for this game here. Yeah, I think well, the Mirror Force would have complicated things either way, so I'm not sure there was a way that we were really winning this game, necessarily. We could have set the DD Assailant instead to play around Mirror Force, just try and get in for 21. We could have also Snatch Stolen the Bazoo, try and get in with Cyber Dragon, and then they would have potentially Mirror Force that, pop their own monster, and then we set the DD Assailant, and then we're doing okay. But then they just bring out End instead of Twin, and they have the Shrink as well. So, oh no, that's just original attack. So yeah, they've got the End. They go for limit removal. This has 1600 defense, so we take 6400 and then 1400 off the Stein. So we're not quite dead. We have our premature burial shut off. We don't have Snatch. We've got a dead Zaborg in hand. So it's still not looking good for us, but we're not dead. So that's something, but I feel like we'd still be in a losing position at that point. Yeah, I mean, they've got return set, so if they ever do get a monster they can banish, then they can bring everything back and get in for lethal. So yeah, we would have had our work cut out for us here if we did do that play, which I do think is the wrong play, you know, if we're thinking about it without the foreknowledge of what they've got. I do think that going aggressive is the right play because they need sort of the 1 of Mirror Force to really stop that. And they did have it here, but, you know, there's no way for us to really play around that too much. But that's going to do it for this game. Let's dive into the next one now and see if we can actually win one. Okay, for our last set of games, we got some games against Model Zero, another frequent guest on the channel, always put it out of the mom. And of course, we've got to go back to paper meta for the last couple of matches for this video. You know, I'm just sprinkling the meta of rock, paper, scissors with a bunch of different options. So hopefully, you know, that confuses the meta game a bit and allows us to win more rock, paper, scissors in the future. Anyways, we're going to go for Coffee here. Get a peek at their hand. Always great to open with a first turn Coffee. We see Decree, Charity, Meta, Assure Priest, and Sangan. And yeah, we're taking the Charity. Charity's just too strong. So we do leave them with a Sangan and an Assure Priest, but it's a bit awkward here. I think we've got ways to deal with that pretty nicely. We set this Torrential Tribute here, pass back to them. And I like this play a lot because we want to use TT early before they can set up a Decree. So, you know, this baits them into going for the Assure Priest, and then we can TT that. If they just set a Sangan here, for instance, we could just summon out Warrior Lady attack in over that, banish that. Our TT is dead at that point, but at least we've, like, gotten rid of their Sangan. And, yeah, it would just be kind of unfortunate because then we wouldn't really have a good way to deal with the Assure Priest. But it wouldn't be the end of the world, for sure. But I'm very glad they went for the Assure Priest there instead. They're going to set 1 pass back to us. We draw a Reaper, which is pretty good. We could just get aggressive with Warrior Lady or Tomato, but I'm fine just summoning out this Reaper, attacking in for 300, and ripping a card out of their hand. Because if we hit Sangan, that's really good for us. Looks like we do, so I feel very good about that. They're going to bring out a Breaker here, attack in for 1600, and pass back to us. We are down to 5400, which is a bit scary for us. We do also draw Cyber Dragon, so we could go Last Will into Stein after tributing a Reaper for Cyber Dragon. We drop it down to 400, which is a bit of a scary spot to be in, but if we bring out Twin, and if we have the read that the set is Decree, then that does get in for a lot of damage. Gets in for 7700 minus 1900, so they'd be at 1900 life points left at that point, and that seems pretty good to me. But what I do instead is I choose to get a little bit aggressive here because, you know, that would put us at a very low life point total with Decree in their back row. So we'd be at a very vulnerable spot as well. So what I choose to do instead is I choose to attack in to the Breaker with the Warrior Lady here and then just get in another hand rip, playing it slow and playing a little bit risky in case they've got a big OTK potential of their own. But I do feel like this is fine. We're just getting in for a hand rip every turn, but unfortunately they do have this Assure Priest and a Cyber Dragon there, so they are able to get in for a lot of damage here. Add that Sure Priest back to hand, and now our last will is a little bit worse here. So we're going to think about exactly what to do here. We go for Cold Wave, switch the Reaper to defense, and then set a Tomato here, and then pass back to them. They're just going to attack into the Tomato. We get out a Sangan from deck, and now we contribute that for Cyber Dragon, crash the Cyber Dragons, and then bring something else out from our deck with Will. We draw into a Stein here, which is quite dead, unfortunately. We are just going to tribute over that Sangan with the Cyber Dragon there, and add that Magician of Faith. We go for a last will, just to get out Frog in rotation here. But, I mean, it's a little bit awkward getting out Frog that way, but I do think that ultimately it's fine, because this is just putting another wall for them to potentially not be able to get over. And then main two, I make a major mistake. I set a call here. I shouldn't have done this, because Decree shuts off us from activating Call, which then will shut off our Treeborn Frog. So I should not have set the call. I'm not sure really what I was thinking there. But either way, it doesn't end up mattering in this game, because they've got Premat to bring back a Sangan from grave, and then they're going to tribute that off for an Air Knight Parshath, which I was not expecting at all, because this card is not really played in this format that much, but that is actually lethal damage into the Treeborn Frog. So, you know, it is what it is. I think if I'd gone for the Stein play earlier, maybe things would have turned out a little bit differently for us, but it still would have been a bit of an uphill battle, I think, in general. But, you know, again, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to make sort of decisions with this deck that lock you into one path or another. And we made a decision that sent us down, you know, a bit more of a passive path, but I do think a defendable path. But unfortunately, it did cost us there later in the game. Anyway, we're going to set an Econ, pass back to them. You know, we can use Econ in case they've got something like Zalug, for instance, which we don't necessarily want to hit in. We could also just let this Zalug hit in, and then, like, you know, the things that we don't want them to hit are like Stein and Cyber Dragon. But if they do hit either, we've got the other one to go for instead. So that could be something that we do, but we just choose the Econ just in case. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Cyber Dragon again. We're going to bring out this Cyber Dragon, and then we're going to tribute that for a Zaborg. We could have also tributed for a Mobius to trade with the back row that way. But if it is something like Book or something, then the Zaborg still survives, and that's really bad for us. So I'd rather just get the guaranteed monster pop and attack in for 24. Now we'll go through. We pass back to them. They've got Sidra plus Sangan here. They're going to attack the Sidra into the Zaborg, and that's a shrink. So yeah, I'm very glad that I went for the Zaborg instead of the Mobius, because if we had popped the shrink, they would have chained it, have the Mobius attack down at 1200. That would have been a bit bad for us. So they're going to attack in for 1000 after that. Set two more, pass back to us. We draw Graceful Charity here, which is pretty good. We can set up our Chaos Sork, which is pretty nice. So we draw into a second Cyber-Stein, so we can pitch that for sure. And then we're going to pitch the other Cyber-Stein as well, because we are running pretty low on life. And, you know, I don't know, I could have sent like something else instead, but this is a pretty stacked hand overall. And I like the ability of just bringing out Mobius, popping their back row as well, which is probably what I'm going to do this turn. So I think it's fine going for this. Go for Mobius, pop their back row. They've got a TT there, so they're going to chain that, pop the entire board, get a search, grab a Zalug there, which is a bit rough for us, or it would be unless we bring out this Chaos Orc. So I feel pretty good about that. We can attack in for 23 now, and also wall them off from getting in for a hand rip. So I feel pretty good about that until they go for a Chaos Orc of their own and Zalug. So now they're able to get in for 1400 plus a hand rip here. And now we're in a really tough spot. So they're going to take the Magician of Faith there, set one, pass back to us. We draw a Mystic Tomato, which is okay. You know, we could just crash the Tomato into the Zalug. I don't necessarily want to do that, so I'm just going to set the Tomato instead. I figure they're probably going to attack with the Chaos Arc first, because then they can get in for hand rip with the Zalug. And also, you know, Chaos Arc can get over anything that I might be setting, whereas Zalug might not be able to. And if they do that, then they can't banish whatever we bring out off this Tomato. So we can just bring out another Tomato like that, and potentially clear the Zalug next turn, and also potentially set a Warrior Lady here. We draw Comfy, which is pretty good. We're going to bring out this Warrior Lady, attack in to the Sork, and try and banish it, but they've got the Mirror Force for that. We've got Comfy. You know, we could have held the Comfy as well, but I do think we kind of have to go for it just to try and get them out of ways to remove the Tomato in a way that lets them attack in. For instance, if they get like Zaborg in hand or something, and that just wins them the game. So I do think I just have to go for this. They could always draw into a way to do that as well, but I think that I'm at the point where I just need to get sniping in that hand with Comfy. And unfortunately, it's just a goat. They've got a Sure Priest here, so that should wrap things up. Even if I like deck them out, you know, the math is just on the wall, because this thing can attack into even a Reaper if I bring that out too. So it doesn't really matter here. I bring out Sangan, but they still attack in for 7. And yeah, that will just be the end of the game. because they can attack him for 34 with the Zalug and the Sork, and that will just do it. So kind of unfortunate here. I'm not sure what we really could have done differently this last game, because even if we had gone for Stein earlier, they had a TT to wipe away the board. So yeah, if we'd gone for Stein, paid the 5, and then they'd gone for TT, we wouldn't have been able to do anything there. And going into, like, I mean, we special Sidra first, so, and I think that was always how we were starting that turn, because we want that Sidra on field to get in for more damage. So either way, I think we would not have won that one there. But that's going to do it for this match. We got another game with Model Zero immediately after this, a rematch. So let's dive into that one now. Okay, we got a rematch against Model Zero here. Let's dive into it. We unfortunately lose the rock, paper, scissors for the first time in this video. You know, it had to happen eventually, but maybe that will bode well for us because we've lost all the previous matches, and maybe this one will be able to win since we lost the rock, paper, scissors. But we draw into a last roll here. We're just going to go for a Hydro play, you know, try and attack into that Sangan, bring in another Hydro, and that will indeed succeed. So we feel very good about that. We bring out this Hydro here. They bring out Zalug. That's a bit scary to see. But we can attack in with the Hydro there for 1600. Main 2 just set this Mirror Force pass back to them. They're going to go for a heavy here, wiping away the Decree and the Mirror Force. Then bringing out an Assure Priest, attacking over both of our Hydros. We are perfectly fine with this. We take 2, but then we got plays for next turn. So we are just going to go for a Tomato here, attack in for 14. And then in main 2, we're just going to set this Econ pass back to them. They go for an Assure Priest here, attack into our Tomato. We are going to take that 3, and then we're going to try and deck then here, just bring out multiple Tomatoes. We are taking a bit more damage doing this, but I do think it's better in general for just, you know, having a way to set up an OTK next turn, because I am going to try and go for an OTK next turn potentially. So we're going to take another 3 here. We're going to bring out a Cyber-Stein to end with, because then we can Econ the Assure Priest into defense mode, and they just admit defeat. So yeah, I mean, the next draw would have hopefully been something to deal with the back row, but I think either way, after we summon out the sign, we're kind of committed into going for an OTK, which I do think was pretty good, because, like, that Assure Priest would clear the board no matter what, and they've got Don Zalug follow up later in case they continue to clear the board, so I feel like I just had to go for that now. And again, you know, sometimes you got to make that decision and, you know, live with it. Even if they do have a way to stop you, you know, you kind of have to go for it. And that's one of the most difficult things about this deck, is that it can be very scary to do that for a lot of players, but, you know, sometimes you just got to do it. We actually sided into the gold here because they are playing Zalugs, they are playing Reapers, etc. So, or I don't know if we've seen Reaper out of them, but they're definitely playing Zalug, and they're going very aggressive for the hand rips. So I feel like gold is a pretty good side deck card here to do there. So I like that. And we have a potential option to potentially go for an OTK here, because we got Graceful, so we can just pitch the gold and special summon that out, and then bring out Cyber-Stein and just go for lethal that way, especially because we got knock. But I choose not to do that. I choose to keep the gold in hand as sort of like a safety measure in case they go for like Dawn, or they have the back row that stops this. I knock their set, go for a DD Assailant here and get in for 17, or try to, but they've got a TT here. So I'm very glad I did it this way, because, you know, I wouldn't be getting in for lethal here anyways. But we're just going to pass back to them. They bring out an Assure Priest here. That's fine. We'll take the 17, and then they'll set 1 pass back to us. We are going to draw into another Stein. So we're just going to go for Stein and go for the effect and get in for a fair bit of damage, because we could bring out Sentry. I don't really think it's necessary to negate their traps, because, you know, if it was threatening or something, they would have fired it already. They've already used up a TT, so like Mirror Force is the only thing that punishes this. I feel like getting in for more damage is better here. So we're going to attack in for 7 plus 5,600, and unfortunately they've got Econ for our Cyber Twin, so that will not go through. But I still think we're in a good spot. They haven't actually cleared the Cyber Twin. They can get in over the Stein if they want to. We've got Econ, though, so we'll take these Assure Priest here, because we do know about Shrink. And if they shrunk down our Cyber-Stein, then we would just lose the game on the spot. So I do feel like we have to go for that. And then the Assure Priest goes back to their hand at the end of the turn. We don't have to fear TT, so we can just bring in this Hydrogeddon. Attack in for 16, plus 28 there. And I'm feeling pretty good about this. They do have book to set down the Cyber Twin, so again, stopping us from getting in for that damage. But I feel like this is ultimately pretty good. They attack in with this Cyber Dragon, and again, you know, if they've got Shrink, this is lethal damage, so I've got to Mirror Force that. And also, we do know about Decree, so I feel like it's important to get that off the field. They go for Premat here, getting back that Cyber Dragon, setting 2, passing back to us. We draw a Sangan here, which is pretty good. We're going to flip the Cyber Twin here, attack into the Cyber Dragon, and that will indeed go through. So if they did have Shrink, this wouldn't be lethal, because this would just drop down to 14, and then we take 7 from that. So we feel okay about doing that. We're then going to attack into the set with this Hydrogen here, they're going to add back an Econ, which is quite scary because now they can actually take control of our Cyber Twin, get in that way. I think I should have probably brought out Hydrogen defense because of that. But then what they do, they summon out a Sure Priest, attack over both of our Hydrogens, and then Econ take the Cyber Twin, and then win the game that way. So, yeah, I kind of lose no matter what here. But that's how it goes sometimes. And, you know, I mean, I'll give them the satisfaction, I think, of trying that. Or actually, no, because actually we have a chance to win just from this. So, actually, you know, I think this is ultimately fine. They do go for Shrink now, though. So they did recognize that, you know, they did have a game-winning shot by going for Econ here. So, yeah. So, unfortunately, the one chance I had to potentially win by attacking in with Cyber Twin that way did cost me the game there. So, yeah, I mean, again, that's how it sometimes goes. If you go aggressive with Stein, you can get punished for that. But I do think we kind of had to do that just to try and get a game shot in. But unfortunately, it did fail. But we're going to dive in to game 3. And let's see how we do. We're going first, so that's pretty good. So this will hopefully give us a bit of an edge. But I mean, that's not the best edge, honestly. We're just going to set this TT, pass back to them. You know, hopefully they set a card here and we can go for knock or Hydrogen on it, but they've got the Comfy here, unfortunately. They are able to rip a card out of our hand. They're going to rip the Get On, which is kind of rough. They go for Ashura, we TT that, and then they're going to set one pass back to us. We draw Cold Wave, so we could just go Cold Wave here, go for Stein, which is what I'm planning on doing. Unfortunately, they've got T-Roar here, so they're able to stop that. Otherwise, that would have been a pretty good play, but T-Roar is a good side deck card against these Stein decks. They are going to just pass back to us, and I feel pretty good about that. We can't quite get lethal here with the Stein play. So I flip up the Faith here. I think I should have actually not done that because I can't get lethal. What I'm thinking here is that, like, yes, I can't get lethal with this, but by having the Faith to do 300 extra damage, I put them in a scarier spot than they would otherwise be in. So, you know, I go for this just in case, and I'm like, well, if they've got a way to take Cyber Twin, I probably lose either way here. But realistically, I don't lose either way because I'd just be taking 21 off a Cyber Twin attack as opposed to, you know, 21 plus 25. So I think I should have kept the Magician of Faith set there as opposed to flipping it up. And then I set this Mirror Force, set the Cold Wave, and pass back to them. Now, there is also a different line I could have taken here. Instead of going for Cyber Twin, I could have gone for Last Warrior from Another Planet, prevented them from summoning for the rest of the game. I didn't like that play, though, because I feel like it doesn't put as much pressure on them. And if they've got, like, Creature Swap or something, which they might have, they're playing Scapegoat, and, you know, they're playing Assure Priest, and Creature Swap does go in those decks pretty well, then I don't want to just get Creature Swapped and then lose the Last Warrior, and then I'm just, like, got no way to win the game, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I could have gone for Last Warrior. That might have been the better move, but I am fine with this, honestly. I think this is a pretty good play. Unfortunately, they do have Graceful, so they're able to set 2 there. Go for the Heavy Storm, popping the Mirror Force and the Cold Wave there. They're able to go for a Chaos Struck, banish the Cyber Twin, go for meta, and bring out a Ryu Sentry here, and then attack over the Magician of Faith to get in for 17. So that's kind of rough for us. We don't really have a good way around this. We draw Last Will, which won't quite help us here. So we're just going to set the Sangan, set the knock, pass back to them. And they're going to attack over our Cyber-Stein. That's kind of rough. They're going to pass back to us. We draw another Cyber-Stein, which is not helping us here. We set that Cyber-Stein, pass back to them. They're going to attack over with the Ryu Sentry there, pass back to us. We draw an Econ, which we can't actually use to take the Ryu Sentry. We can still activate it. Like, we can tribute the Sangan with the Econ, target the Sentry, that gets negated, and then we can potentially get a Sangan Search and a Last Will trigger, potentially. That's something we could do. We could actually try and go for lethal that way. They have not used up Mirror Force, so that's a bit risky, but we could try and go for lethal that way by econing, you know, the Sangan, bring out like a DD Warrior Lady with Last Will, and then trying to get in to the Sentry and summoning out something else with like whatever we search with the Sangan and getting in for lethal that way. That is a potential option we could go for. I think it's a little bit risky because, you know, we have seen that they're on threatening roars and things like that. So I choose not to go for it. But I don't know, maybe there's an argument for doing that. In hindsight, like, they've got Shrink and Threatening Roar, so I wouldn't have actually gone through and I would have still lost, but that is a line that we could have done if I just had the read that their back row is dead. But either way here, I search out a Warrior Lady with the Sangan. We draw Cold Wave, which is pretty good. I'm just going to set the DD Warrior Lady, though, pass back to them, because I feel like I can't let them, you know, go for a lethal line if they do have it under Cold Wave. I like the Econ as a defensive measure. So it's a bit tricky here, but I do go for this. And unfortunately, we draw into Cyber Dragon, which is kind of rough because now we've got a monster on field. We go for Cold Wave now. They do have Threatening Roar, so, you know, that shuts off anything that we're planning on doing. What we were planning on doing is just tribute summoning out this this Cyber Dragon, then hitting over the Sentry, because, you know, they can't activate anything with Cold Wave to get over this. Do they have Chaos typing? They do have Chaos typing in Grave, so they could bring out a Sork and potentially get over that, but I mean, either way, like if they've got Sork, you know, they've got Sork. And we do have Econ to potentially take that later as well. So they're just going to go for a set monster there, pass back to us. Now, they did potentially have lethal damage here because they set a Warrior Lady, and we were under Cold Wave, so we couldn't activate any of our back row. They know that the set is DD Warrior Lady based on, you know, our draws and things like that. So they could have just gone either Sentry into Warrior Lady and then attacked directly with Warrior Lady, or just Warrior Lady into the set and then Sentry direct. And that would have actually been lethal damage. But, you know, it's fine because, you know, we also throw. So you know, we also have a potential lethal line, but we don't do it. We go for Zaborg, pop the set, because I'm like, okay, I get in for 400 over the Sentry, and that's really good. But I've got this knock set, so I should just go Zaborg, pop Sentry, and then knock the set, and then get in for lethal damage that way, potentially. Because as is, turns out that they've got a Shrink here. So even if we attack into the Sentry, they go for Shrink. We take 8. We can bring out a monster with that will, potentially. But first, we're going to special summon out this Sidra, just to get it on the field, and bring out a Spirit Reaver from deck in defense. We'll pass back to them. They're going to attack into the Sidra, and because, you know, we know about the Shrink, we have to go for Econ, tribute the... Or, I mean, we don't know about the Shrink, but, like, we have the read that they're doing this only because of the Shrink. We go for Econ, tribute our Sidra, target the Sentry, and that will be negated, but, you know, this will still get our Sidra off field. Now, if they've got Shrink, either way here, they win because they go Shrink on the Reaper, and, you know, that will destroy it, and then they attack him with Sentry for game. So, realistically, this was also kind of a throw on my part because they might have just been doing this to bluff that we had, that they had Shrink. But, yeah, it doesn't matter either way because they just set to pass back to us. We draw a DD Assailant here. We finally remember the knock. Then we set our Assailant, pass back to them. They go for a Sentry over the Assailant. And finally, you know, we've gotten rid of that Sentry. So some of our stuff is online. We set a Comfy here, pass back to them. They go for Tomato. They've got Shrink for our Reaper. And that'll just be the end of the game. So, yeah, very intense final game here. We did throw this one, so we could have potentially won it. But I think, you know, they also could have won it as well, as I explained on the previous turn. So, you know, it doesn't really matter too much here. I think either way, we were probably losing the game. But... I mean, hopefully this game, you know, hopefully this video actually just captured how powerful this deck can be, but also how tough it is to play, you know. You have to make these big decisions based on, like, either reads or just, you know, thinking about, like, how the game will progress from where you're at. And you've got to just decide, okay, do I commit into the Stein and potentially lose the game? Or do I just go for that game shot? And, you know, if they've got back row be damned, you know. And that's a decision that can be very tough for a lot of people. I mean, it was very tough for me in these games, for sure. And if you can make that decision well, then this deck can do very well for you. But if you can't, then it might be not the deck for you in this format. But that's going to do it for my video on the Steinarch deck. Let me know what you think about this deck down in the comments below. Are you upset that this deck is still around, even in Chaos Return format, after Last Blow got hit? Or are you fine with this deck being there because things like Last Blow and Treeborn Frog got hit, so it will probably be a bit less bad than it is in something like Reaper format or Cyber format? Let me know down in the comments below, and I hope that you enjoyed as always. If you like what you saw here, definitely subscribe to the channel. I got more Chaos Return games coming on the way, more retro Yu-Gi-Oh content in general. If you want games in Chaos Return format or any other format that I feature on the channel, definitely head over to the YGO from Zero Discord server linked in the description down below. If you want to support me directly, I also have a Patreon linked in the description down below. And if you join the Patreon, you get shouted in these videos. So big shout outs to Tyler Compton, GeoMyFS, Rinswin, Porkchopcoon, Bren Donker, and Dumptruck. It really means a lot. You all support me this way and encourage me to make more videos like this in the future. But I hope you enjoyed it as always. Definitely subscribe if you're interested. We're trying to reach 1,500 by the end of the month, and time's ticking, so we may not reach that goal, but I'd really like to get as close as possible. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero. I'm signing off.